Jones and the Dial of Destiny is out now in theaters. If you've been following my channel, I've been reviewing, or I have reviewed, all of the Indiana Jones movies leading up to Dial of Destiny this year, and it is finally upon us. Dial of Destiny is the fifth and final Indiana Jones movie, and once again stars Harrison Ford as everybody's favorite archaeologist. Finding himself in a new era, approaching retirement, Indy wrestles with fitting into a world in 1969 that seems to have outgrown him. But as the tentacles of an all-too-familiar evil return in the form of an old rival, Indy must don his hat and pick up his whip once more to make sure an ancient and powerful artifact doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Now, when I heard that there was a new Indiana Jones movie coming out, and it wasn't going to be directed by Steven Spielberg, but instead directed by James Mangold, I tampered my expectations. I told myself at least be better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because I love all three of the original movies, and I've had a newfound love for Temple of Doom. I stated that in my review. I love those three movies. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull has its moments, but overall as a movie, I really don't like it. I think it's a very disappointing Indiana Jones movie, and for a long time, it seemed like that was going to be the one that Indiana Jones went out on until Dial of Destiny was announced, and while neither of the trailers for Dial of Destiny really did anything to get me hyped, I was just hoping that it would at least satisfy me in the way that it would be better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. For many, that might not be acceptable, because Dial of Destiny is the final Indiana Jones movie. And in that way, it has a legacy it has to live up to. It's never going to touch the original trilogy. For anybody wanting it to be as good as that original trilogy, you're going to be massively disappointed. I am happy that this is Indy's final adventure instead of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It is better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It's nowhere near as good as the original trilogy. And like I said, it was never going to be. I'll get my negatives out of the way first. I don't usually do that. I try to hold my negatives until after I do my positives. I just want you guys to know that off the bat, this isn't a perfect Indiana Jones movie. I think it's a pretty solid or good Indiana Jones movie, but it's not a great Indiana Jones movie. I want you guys to know why I feel that way in the first place. I think that there's a few too many supporting characters in this movie. There's a long list of characters you got to follow around, and sometimes it's hard to keep track of who's who and who's working with who, because there's so many different allegiances and so many different places we go to with so many new characters introduced. It just becomes a little bit wrapped up in trying to make those characters memorable for Indiana Jones fans. And the plot really just calls for new characters every 10 minutes or so, to the point where you just kind of get lost and you're like, I'm sorry, who are you again? But I will say, all the new characters in this movie beat anybody who's a new character in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I mean, I fucking hated Oxley. I hated Mac. He's probably the worst Indiana Jones character ever. Everybody in this movie is leagues better than anybody in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. CGI was noticeable at times. The de-aging of Harrison Ford in the beginning, it's in the trailer. It didn't necessarily bother me. There's a few moments where you can see it where it doesn't really match up. You hear his voice, but his mouth's not really moving, and it looks a little glitchy in parts. That was the least of my concerns, because I know that the de-aging technology just hasn't been perfected yet. So I was looking for it, but at the same time, I was trying to focus my attention away from the de-aging. And when I did, I found it working really well. And honestly, that 20-minute prologue, I'll get back to it in a minute, was fucking phenomenal. But there is a moment in that prologue, it's a distant shot of Indy running on top of a train, and the CGI was really, really bad. And it looked borderline late 90s, early 2000s CGI, and I just went, ooh! For a movie that cost $300 million, that's gotta get cleaned up. And the third act, the last 20 minutes of the movie, did not really like. I thought it lost a little bit of steam, lost a little bit of momentum as the plot was taking us to where we were eventually going. And where we eventually go, I thought was dumb. I was like, that's stupid. That is literally what I didn't want this movie to do. That's something that should have been implied rather than explicitly shown. It was a third act that didn't necessarily learn from the mistake of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull when Crystal Skull made that same mistake, and a slew of other mistakes. So that's a choice that didn't really sit well with me. And then there's also another choice that I thought was borderline asinine that the movie almost followed through on, and I almost got pissed off. I audibly yelled, "Are you fucking kidding me?" in the theater. The guy in front of me looked back at me, started laughing, and he's like, "I can't believe they're about to do this." And I was ready to just walk out of the theater there and not even stay for the final 5 minutes of the movie because I thought it was going to be the dumbest thing you could ever do in an Indiana Jones movie. Luckily, the movie backtracks on that. It doesn't follow through on that decision. But if it had, I'm not a big fan of saying a flaw in a movie kills the entire experience for me because the first 2/3 of a movie can be really good. And then if there's a choice that's made in the third act and it's really bad, I'm not going to say it's going to kill the whole movie, but in this case, that if they had followed through on it, it would have killed the whole movie for me. I would have been like, nope, this is the worst Indiana Jones movie ever. It would not have sat well with me if they had followed through on that. Those are essentially my big issues with Dial of Destiny. The script can be all over the place too. I guarantee you a lot of people are going to complain about the exposition, but every Indiana Jones movie has exposition in almost every scene. That's a big component of these movies, learning about the ancient artifacts and all that. But for the rest of the movie, I was actually having a blast. Something I can't say about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I know I really shouldn't be complaining about it or comparing it to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but that's just how my brain works. I thought the action set pieces in this had a lot more energy to them than in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There wasn't anything that felt like it was overlit or artificially filmed on a green screen. It all looked like it was filmed on location. There are some green screen shots where I was like, it doesn't really sit well with me, and I wish that they had used a bit more practical effects, but for the most part, the movie just kept moving. That's what an Indiana Jones movie has to do. The movie kept moving, the action kept the movie moving, and I liked a lot of the action in this movie. And the brisk pace. This is a 2.5 hour Indiana Jones movie. I felt like it was at least like an hour and 52 hours. Didn't feel like it was 2.5 hours. Did not need to be 2.5 hours, but it didn't feel like it was 2.5 hours. And that's because this movie understood that Indiana Jones movies are like bullets. They fly as fast as bullets. Steven Spielberg gave Mangold the advice for this movie saying, it's like a trailer. It has to keep moving. Dial of Destiny keeps moving. Not a single dull moment in this movie. I'm not saying that the action is as good as any of the iconic action scenes in the first three movies, but there are a few standout action sequences in this movie, and I think it's filmed a lot better. I think it has more energy than any of the action in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. So the opening prologue alone, the first 20 minutes of the movie, are better than the entirety of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And don't let anybody tell you differently. I'm not here for this Kingdom of the Crystal Skull revisionism bullshit. This whole review has just turned into me bitching again about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I will not stop. Also, John Williams, dude. Well, I mean, what can you say about John Williams? He delivers on every movie. When he dies, the music industry dies with him. There is no coming back from that loss. This man is a legend. He's a genius. Putting the Raiders March in the right spots in the movie. His score is brilliant. There's quite a few emotional moments, too. There's a moment between Indy and Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena, on a boat where Indy's explaining some things and what happened in his life. And I was just like, that's actually kind of touching right now. In the final 5 minutes, sealed the deal for me, where I said, okay, that just made up for the almost borderline asinine last 20 minutes, but luckily the last 5 minutes brought it all home for me. And that opening prologue it felt like an Indian. Here's the thing. Dial of Destiny, throughout the entirety of its runtime, at least felt like an Indiana Jones movie. I felt like I was on an Indiana Jones adventure, globetrotting adventure, just a brisk, fast-paced movie that did deliver some thrills, even if it doesn't have the magic or it doesn't have the level of thrills that the original trilogy did. It's not going to. Seeing Harrison Ford pick up that whip and that fedora for one last time was wonders to behold. The man is a legend. I could not believe that I was watching a new Indiana Jones movie in a theater for the first time in 15 years. 15 years it's been since we got an Indiana Jones movie. That's crazy. I also liked Phoebe Waller-Bridge, her dynamic with Indy in this movie as well. For some reason, everybody's just going to hate this movie because for some reason, everybody hates Phoebe Waller-Bridge. If somebody can explain to me why Phoebe Waller-Bridge is hated, Sure, tell me, but I'll probably call you an idiot in the process. I liked her character a lot. I liked Mads Mikkelsen as the villain. He was a solid enough villain. I don't think he was as good as the movie thinks he is, but he was solid enough. And once you get to his motivation makes sense in the world because he's literally a pissed off guy. And I love Indy's thought process in this movie. I'm too old for adventures. Every single bone in my body aches while I'm scaling this mountain. He doesn't like that NASA has recruited former Nazi scientists. It feels like it brings everything full circle. And while it's not a perfect movie, it was at least a joy to watch an Indiana Jones movie again in a movie theater and at least delivered fun. And that was what I wanted from this movie. At least be fun. At least keep moving in parts. Don't piss me off by making some choices that it borderline almost does. And don't be as dull or as slow moving or look as artificially lit or overlit as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did. You don't have to match the quality of the first three movies here. Just give me a fun enough adventure that feels like it could be the final adventure for Indiana Jones in his lifetime. And that's what I felt like I got. I hope mostly everybody else feels like that's what they get to. I'm going to give Dial of Destiny a letter grade because I gave the other four a letter grade. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny a B. It's a fun, satisfying final adventure for Indiana Jones. It's nothing special, but it did what I needed it to. So if you have seen Dial of Destiny, I want to know what you thought about it. I will be doing a spoiler review very soon for Dial of Destiny, so if you have seen it, drop me your thoughts on the movie in the comments section below. I will leave my link to my website in the description below as well. You guys are the best. Thank you for watching. My name is Alex Madden, and I will see you at the movies somewhere.